Well, guys, we've now passed the halfway mark, as it's now time for my Week 10 picks of the 2022 NFL season, as last week I went 8-5, unfortunately. After the 1 p.m. games, I think it was like 6-2 or something like that. I was in a really good spot, but of course, once again, at least it wasn't as bad as I think it was Week 7, where I completely collapsed at the end, struggled along the rest of the way. And still have not been having a good season in terms of picks in that regard. And of course, here is the regular season and the playoff stands at the season end of the day. In the AFC, it's the Bills with the bye, with Chargers at Chiefs, Dolphins at Ravens, and Jets at Titans. And the NFC, it's the Eagles with the bye, with 49ers at Vikings, Giants at Seahawks, and Cowboys at Buccaneers. And my Super Bowl pick is the Bills still against the Eagles, as nothing's changed for like 5 weeks in a row or whatever. So now, let's get to my Week 10 picks, as we start off with Thursday night tonight, as it'll be the Falcons at the Panthers. As the Falcons won the last two, the Panthers haven't beaten them since 2021, and they haven't won at home since 2019. Of course, remember they played 2 weeks ago, and the Falcons held on to win it in the end. So the Falcons, of course, lost a tough one to the Chargers last week. The Falcons are a really weird team. I don't think they're that good, but hey, they're still around 500. They've been pretty competitive in a lot of their games. So if things went their way, they probably would be having one of the better records in the NFC right now. It's crazy. Meanwhile, the Panthers, after several good weeks, after the coaching change, they got the shit kicked out of them by the Bengals. But then they brought Baker back in, and all of a sudden they scored 3 touchdowns in the fourth quarter, or whatever. So very interesting to say how they turned it around at the end. And oh boy, this is going to be a tough game, as both went down to the wire just 2 weeks ago, and both teams' defenses are so trash that maybe it'll be an offensive showcase. I don't know if they're going to be starting Baker this week, which maybe they should after how well he did last week. Man, it's going to be a tough one. Oh my god. You know what? Maybe. This might be a little bit crazy, but I think I might just take the Panthers on the hope that maybe they'll start Baker and he'll hopefully play that good like he did last Sunday. And then we get to Sunday action, starting off with our first ever regular season NFL game in Germany, as the Seahawks are at the Buccaneers for the first time since 2016, as the Seahawks won the last one. The Buccaneers haven't beaten them since 2016. The Seahawks have not won on the road against the Buccaneers since 2004. So the Seahawks are 1 win away from matching their wins from last year, as they've now won 4 in a row, having one of the best winning streaks in the NFC, as they spanked the Cardinals pretty good with one of the best offenses in the league. Meanwhile, the Buccaneers got their revenge from the playoff loss last year to the Rams, as they barely held on, and now they've finally ended their 3-game losing streak, as they're once again leading the NFC South, as their offense is still pretty bad. Their defense, though, is still pretty good. So this is going to be interesting. Will the Buccaneers defense hold down the Seahawks offense? Or will the Buccaneers score enough points to challenge the Seahawks? Because they have not been able to do it, as we've seen so far this year. They have not really scored much points whatsoever. So this could be a little bit of a tough one. But I think I might side with momentum right now and pick the Seahawks for this one. But I guess I won't be surprised if the Buccaneers get it in the end. And then we get to a huge outer conference matchup in terms of records, but I don't think in terms of performance, as the Vikings are at the Bills for the first time since 2014. Bills won the last 2. The Vikings haven't beaten them since 2010. And they haven't won in Buffalo since 1997. So the Vikings have now won 6 in a row, as I think they do have the second best winning streak in the league behind the Eagles. Yet they did not really play that good against the Commanders. They barely pulled it off because the Commanders kind of choked in the end. Meanwhile, the Bills choked themselves against the Jets. But more importantly, despite the loss, is Josh Allen got injured, as he's day by day right now. So a little bit of a concern in that regard. But the Bills still are one of the best teams in the league other than a rushing offense. And you know what, honestly? Even if Allen doesn't get the play, I still think the Bills are so much superior than the Vikings. The Vikings are not really that good for a 7-1 team when you look at their stats, so I still am going to pick the Bills even if Allen doesn't play. So then we get to an AFC North matchup as the Lions are at the Bears. The Bears won the last two. The Lions haven't beaten them since 2020. As the Lions, all of a sudden their defense showed up as they they humiliated the Packers in one of the worst games I think I've ever seen them play in. As they got the win, embarrassed them, as they finally ended their, 5-game losing streak, which was up there as one of the longest in the league. And meanwhile, the Bears, last two games, played very good offensively, as that was a good loss against the Dolphins. Even there was like 3 times in the game where Dolphins had a huge lead and the Bears fought back to keep it within a score. So, very impressive job. And now, if you look at their stats, it's their defense that's been so horrible, where their offense is starting to catch up a little bit. Although they still got a lot of work to do, as Justin Fields has definitely played a lot better these last 2 weeks. And, oh my God, this game is so hard to pick. Oh, man. Really, it's like you could say either one can go for it. And normally, I probably would say the Lions would probably get this going before the last few weeks or whatever. Oh, man. But the problem with the Lions is their defense is still terrible, although they did a good job against the Packers last week. And their offense has not been as good and explosive as it was at the beginning of the year. And the Bears, offensively, I think they have a little bit of momentum. And their defense is the only thing that's holding them back. But I just don't fully trust the Lions right now to put up all those points needed. So you know what? Maybe a little bit of an upset. I might actually pick the Bears for this one. I think I trust them a little bit more right now in this matchup. And then it's the Jaguars at the Chiefs for the first time since 2018. The Chiefs won the last 5. The Jaguars haven't beaten them since 2009 and haven't won an Arrowhead since 2007. As the Jaguars beat the Raiders, who choked it away, as the Jaguars now match their win total from last year, trying to improve from last year. Meanwhile, the Chiefs, they had a hard-fought game against the Titans. They had to pull a comeback to get the win, as still 6-2. And I'm going to pick the Jaguars for this one, but I would not necessarily underestimate the Jaguars. All their games except for one, I think, have been close. So they definitely are a team that you should be taking seriously. Their stats are definitely way better for a 3-6 team as well. And then it's the Browns at the Dolphins for the first time since 2016, as the Browns won the last one. The Dolphins haven't beaten them since that 2016 game. And the Browns haven't won in Miami since 2010. So the Browns, of course, coming off their bye from Monday night when they humiliated the Bengals, absolutely destroyed them to end their 4-game losing streak, as they're now at 3-5. Meanwhile, the Dolphins have now won 3 in a row, as Tua looked really dominant. Now he's starting to look like the quarterback he should be playing, as everyone who thought the Tyreek Hill trade would work out, as they have one of the best offenses in the league other than a rushing game. Their defense is a little bit problematic, though. This could be a trap game, though, for the Dolphins. The Browns do play good when they visit the Dolphins. They really do play tough, even when they're struggling. So this could be a tough one, but I think I'm going to still pick the Dolphins for this one. Won't be surprised, though, if the Browns perhaps get it. Then it's the Texans at the Giants for the first time since 2014. The Giants won the last 4. The Texans only beat them one time, and that was in 2002 when they hosted them. And they've never won in East Rutherford. So the Texans, don't even remember who they last played. Oh yeah, it was the Eagles. They actually put up a solid game against the Eagles, but they just couldn't get the win, as they still, record-wise, are the worst team in the league. But I don't know if I would say they are the worst team in the league, although their stats look horrible. Meanwhile, the Giants are off their bye when they got spanked by the Seahawks to end their 4-game losing streak, as still have a really elite defense other than their rush defense. Their offense is still kind of bad, although I'm sure some of that stats is inflated because of the bye. I'm picking the Giants still for this one. So then it's the Saints at the Steelers for the first time since 2014, as the Saints won the last 3. Steelers haven't beaten them since 2006. So the Saints got spanked by the Ravens last week. I still have no idea how they're getting all these points scored, or how they're like one of the elite offenses in the league, yet they're 3-6. As their defense is not completely trash for it. Just makes no sense. Meanwhile, the Steelers came off their bye after they got crushed by the Eagles a few weeks ago, as they statistically, honestly, might be the worst team in the league right now. Like, their run defense is good, 9th place, but everything else is 20 or worst. Especially offense looking really horrible. So, this could be a trap game for the Saints, because Steelers do play tough when they play bad teams sometimes. So, I'll pick the Saints still for this one, but I won't be surprised if the Steelers get it after their bye. Then it's the Broncos at the Titans for the first time since 2016. As the Titans won the last one, the Broncos haven't beaten them since 2019, and they haven't won in Nashville since 2011. So the Broncos, of course, came off their bye after beating the Jaguars in London in a close one to finally end their 4-game losing streak to try and get back in the playoff mix. Meanwhile, the Titans, a hard-fought game, but they just couldn't seal it against the Chiefs even when they had it, as their offense looked horrible, especially near the end. As no surprise there, their offense, other than Derrick Henry, is trash. Their defense is kind of disappointing too, even though they have the best run defense and 7th in scoring. Broncos defense is much superior, but the Broncos offense is trash too, even with a superior quarterback. Oh man, it's really tough to pick this one too. Oh man. But since the Titans somehow still keep winning despite how not really that good they are, and the Broncos are not winning when they're supposed to be doing good, I think I still might pick the Titans for this one, but I won't be surprised if maybe the Broncos get an upset. Alright, then we get to the 4 p.m. games. Start off with a match between two teams with winning records last year, as it's the Colts at the Raiders for the first time since 2020. This is the 5th year they played each other. Colts won, the Raiders won the last one. The Colts haven't beaten them since 2020, and the Raiders haven't won against them at home since 1995. So, the Colts got destroyed by the Patriots last week as they now lost 3 in a row, and that led to Frank Reich getting fired, as now their new coach is Jeff Saturday, their former center. Interesting call right there, see how that does. But now, meanwhile, the Raiders, of course, had a hard-fought game against the Jaguars, but once again, just like they've done all year, pulling the Falcons, as Matthew said, as they lost again, on the verge of matching their loss total from last year. Still don't know if I would say they're that bad for a team with their record. Oh boy, this is a really, really, really tough one to pick, that's for sure. Oh my god. Statistically, probably about equalized each other. Colts offense, terrible compared to Raiders, but the Raiders defense is terrible compared to the Colts. These two play each other 5 years in a row now, and lately, especially last year, remember, went right down to the wire. Oh, this is a tough one. I think with the momentum on not on their favor, plus the Raiders still being somewhat competitive, I think I might just barely pick the Raiders. The only thing that might be changing maybe is if Jonathan Taylor plays, because he hasn't played lately last few weeks. But this one's really, really tough to pick. I'm not really confident on this one. And then it'll be the Cowboys at the Packers for the first time since 2016. As the Packers won the last 2, the Cowboys haven't beaten them since 2016. The Packers haven't won at home since 2010. So the Cowboys, I believe, were on their bye from last week, but I can't remember who they played, as they're now 6-2. Meanwhile, the Packers, oh my god, bad enough you lost to the Lions, bad enough you lost 5 in a row now to fall 3-6, but the way you lost was bad. That loss was strictly because of Aaron Rodgers, nothing else. He threw 3 interceptions with, I think, almost all of them being at the goal line. Just one touchdown would have won the game. Oh my god, that was the worst game I think I've seen Aaron Rodgers play in years. Like, that was horrendous how bad he played, and he single-handedly blew it. Complete meltdown. Guess that's not surprising, though, as the Packers statistically are very good, but they can't score points, and they can't stop allowing points. That's the big problem it seems to be. Their offense is pretty good, except at scoring points. Meanwhile, the Cowboys' offense is not looking really good either, other than their defense, except the run defense. But honestly, though, I think this could be a trap game for the Cowboys. And the Packers, of course, especially Aaron Rodgers, has put up good fights against the Cowboys lately. So you know what? Maybe an upset. I'm going to pick the Packers for this one. So then it'll be the Cardinals at the Rams. As the Rams won the last 2, the Cardinals haven't beaten them since 2021. And the Rams haven't beaten them at home since 2020. So, of course, the Cardinals got spanked by the Seahawks as their defense is dog shit. Their offense is still pretty good. Meanwhile, the Rams, it's the reverse. They have one of the worst offenses in the league. Defense is pretty damn good, as they lost a close one to the Buccaneers last week, as they now matched their loss total from last year. Sure, a bunch of that points is because of their bye. So, not looking really good for either one of these teams that made the playoffs last year. I really would like to pick the Cardinals for this one since I trust them more, but they just can't beat the Rams for some reason lately by and large, so I'm going to pick the Rams. And then we get to Sunday night as it's the Chargers at the 49ers for the first time since 2014. The Chargers won the last 5. The 49ers haven't beaten them since 2000. They haven't won at home against them since 1997. So, of course, the Chargers barely beat the Falcons as they're now back over 500. Meanwhile, the 49ers came off their bye when, can't remember, I think they won, but I can't remember who they won against. But they're now at 500, trying to get back over 500. As the Chargers, stat-wise, are not looking that really impressive other than 7th in passing offense. 49ers defense is pretty elite, but their offense is kind of garbage. Ugh, my God. This is going to be another one of those tough games. Might come down to the rope and come down to the wire like against the Falcons, too. And the Falcons were not that really of a good team compared to the 49ers, especially defensively. This is a tough one, but I think I might still just edge out the 49ers for this one. And then finally we get to Monday night, as it's the Commanders at the Eagles. The Eagles won the last 3. The Commanders haven't beaten them since 2020. As the Eagles try to go 9-0 for the first time ever and get their second straight winning season. First team with a win season. So anyways, the Commanders had a tough game, but they just couldn't seal it against the Vikings at the end. Choked it away when they could have gotten to 500. Meanwhile, the Eagles beat the Texans, although there was a little bit of a scare right there in the early part of the game where the Texans were keeping up with them. But the Eagles right now at 500, trying to get closer to clinching a playoff spot, but it's going to be tough with the NFC East being very competitive by and large. This could be a trap game maybe for the Eagles because the Commanders do play tough sometimes when they visit the Eagles, but I'm still going to pick the Eagles for this one. Alright, so those are my Week 10 picks. I cannot wait for Falcons at Panthers tonight, so my picks for Week 10 are Panthers over the Falcons, Seahawks over the Buccaneers, Bills over the Vikings, Bears over the Lions, Chiefs over the Jaguars, Dolphins over the Browns, Giants over the Texans, Saints over the Steelers, Titans over the Broncos, Raiders over the Colts, Packers over the Cowboys, Rams over the Cardinals, 49ers over the Chargers, and Eagles over the Commanders. So see you guys next week for Week 11.